Why I'm pleased to be joined. My next guest is Harrison Frazar. He's on the PGA Tour Champions. He won in Richmond during the playoffs back in the fall. And of course, he played 18 seasons on the PGA Tour. Harrison, what's going on, man? How are you?
Not a whole lot. I'm good. I'm good. It's happy to be here with you.
Well, you know what? We were just talking before we were on air. National championship game going on, and your Longhorns didn't make it. I mean, you got to still be a little frustrated, I'd imagine, right?
Oh, I think I don't know if frustrated is the right word. I would say maybe a little disappointed. Um, but if somebody would have told us this time last year that the Longhorns were going to win the Big 12 and make it to the CFP and have a chance at the last minute to go to the finals, I think we all would have said, "Okay, we'll take it." So I think Coach Sark has done an amazing job. I think those kids have rallied behind the culture, and they've got things going in the right direction. We're ready to go for the SEC.
Yeah, and when I think about the University of Texas and your connection to it, of course, you went there. You were there with Justin Leonard, and a number other of your good friends, guys who would become your good friends. What was it like during that time? Just obviously, I think there was a time where you and your dad were trying to figure out where were you going to go, and then Justin Leonard was getting offers from what Oklahoma State. Wasn't there a moment where you and Justin Leonard kind of just decided let's just do it, right? Let's go to Texas.
Yeah, um, gosh, that was so long ago. So Justin was doing his recruiting deal, and I was doing mine, and we did go to Texas on a recruiting trip together. And while we were there, we kind of said, "Hey, wouldn't it be fun, if we were here together?" Then the next weekend I was at TCU, he was at Oklahoma State, whatever. But we kind of did our whole deal, bouncing around, and then we were sitting at Royal Oaks Country Club one day. I don't remember exactly when it was, sometime in October, and he was hitting balls and I was hitting balls, and I kind of said, "I don't know, man. What are you thinking about doing?" I'm thinking about going to Texas. And he said, "Well, I've made my mind up. I'm going to Texas too." I said, "Great. That's when we kind of realized, hey, we're going to go together." And we were very excited about it, but we didn't plan that in the beginning. It was just kind of meant to be.
Yeah, and what was that camaraderie like with Justin and some of the other players on that team? You guys obviously had some good success, and were obviously a pretty solid group there for that stretch of your life.
Yeah, we had a good team. It's different. Sorry, I'm trying to get this. Uh, it's different back then than it is now. So our coach held us very accountable, but he didn't hold our hand all the time. He didn't make us, do mandatory workouts and nutrition deal and play a certain way. He basically said you have availability to all of this, but you've got 12 guys on this squad that all want to play. If you want to go play, you've got to earn it. So we were close, but we were very competitive at the same time. And the majority of the guys could handle that type of competition. Some couldn't, but it didn't make us any less close. And so I think that helped us grow as people, and it helped us be more responsible when we got out on our own. Maybe more so than we were in college, but we had a good team. I think for the Justin was a four-time All-American. I was three-time All-American, but I redshirted our first year, and he played on. So I actually got to play 2 years after. Is that right? I played 1 year after he left, um, and I don't think we were ever outside the top five. For
Oof.
maybe that entire 5 years. So we were good. We never got a national championship, but we were really really close, and we were really good. We won a lot of tournaments.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, your coach Jimmy Clayton was a big part of that program then, and I think about that time in your life, right? So you would have played high school golf. You would have been in Dallas at that time, and then you go to Texas, you go to Austin. But there were three guys in your career that you looked up to in your younger years, right? That you always wanted to meet, and then you actually had a chance to meet and form relationships with. And I think of those three being, you've mentioned Byron Nelson in the past, Ben Crenshaw, and Tom Watson. What were those three like to create those relationships with over the years?
Okay, I'm sorry. So you cut out in the middle of that.
No, no
I
worries.
didn't even hear the three names.
Okay.
I so tell me again. So who? Byron Nelson, I bet was one of them. I bet
Yeah.
Tom Watson was one of them, and I bet who was the other one? It had to be Ben Crenshaw.
Yeah. Ben
Is
Crenshaw
that
was the
who they
third.
were?
So you've
So
mentioned those three in the past being big
uh,
kind of guys you've always wanted to meet, and then you were lucky to, right, have a relationship with them eventually, right?
yeah, yeah. Well, so Tom Watson, I never really had a relationship with. We did play together a few times on the tour, and I got to meet him, and I thought he was great, a gentleman. I actually did become friendly with Mr. Nelson before he passed. It was a little bit more of a, I was intimidated to be around him too much because I held him in such high esteem. Not that I didn't the others, but I mean, come on, Mr. Nelson, that's, and so if he walked in a room, I almost just froze. I didn't know what to do. But he invited my wife and I to spend the day with him out at his house, one day. And we went and we talked golf, we talked life, we talked religion, we talked, wood shopping, we talked about his career. And then he and I just became friends to where he would send me letters of encouragement when we were, he was with Cleveland Golf and I was too. He would always pull me aside and give me little tips and little words of advice, and that's something I'll never forget. I mean, I'll treasure those moments forever. Ben and I actually became friends, and um, more so than where we would talk, about more real things and actually spend time together. And we worked together on the Trinity Forest project in Dallas, and we talked about grasses and we talked about construction styles and architectural styles and all kinds of things. So I really got to see kind of how the sausage was made, so to speak, on how Ben and his partner Bill Core do their work. And and that's been a big gift in my life as well.
Yeah. Well, you also mentioned right there in the middle about um, Nelson and how he was able to give you advice and this little tidbit. So, was there any kind of lesson that really has stuck with you, really resonated with you over these years?
Yeah. So I'm not the sharpest tag in the box, but I remember he and I were sitting around talking one day, and he kept telling me about this young man that he knew, who every time he got in contention, he would stand there and try to overpower a golf course by hitting full wedges into the greens. And the ball would spin so much and it was uncontrollable. And I would sit there and go, gosh, that's terrible. I wish he wouldn't do that. That's not a good idea. And, a couple months later, we were sitting there together and he tells the same story about, this young man he knew who had a chance to win a tournament. He had a hard wedge and spun it back off the green where he could have hit a little chip shot. So, that goes on over a couple of years. And it took about 5 meetings before I finally realized he's talking about me. So, like, that's his way of telling me he wanted me to figure it out on my own, that you can't sit there and just rip at everything 100 miles an hour all the time. So it that still sticks with me today. In fact, if I have a full wedge shot, somewhere, I always try to take the easier club now because it's more controllable.
Wow. Yeah, that's a lesson that's going to stick with you, I imagine.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, you've always been a longer hitter, and I think about, you went out there and you got that first win on the PGA Tour in 2011, and obviously distance was always a big strength of yours. But you really had to grind and get in that playoff with Robert Carlson. I mean, what was that emotion like? I think you've mentioned like it was an outburst of a lot of emotions, right, over the years. But like, how would you kind of describe that? At that point, you're in your 40s, early 40s at that point. How did you process everything?
yeah. Um, so when I got out on tour, I kind of stumbled my way out there, and everybody kept telling me, you're going to win, you're going to win, you're going to win. And I wanted to, right? I was trying hard and I believed that I could. I believed what they were saying, and I also believed in myself. But as time went on and it didn't happen, you start to doubt yourself. You start to really wonder what's wrong with me, right? Anybody can win. Come on, it's not that hard. It's not that big a deal. And Justin would actually pull me aside all the time and say, you're putting this on a pedestal. You're trying too hard. So the first moment of failure, you would, if you got behind the eight ball too early in a tournament, so to speak, you would just throw your hands up and say, well, okay, I can't win that. And so when I finally did win, it was a relief more than anything else, and I was kind of numb to what was going on around me. I didn't know what it meant. I wasn't thinking about what it meant financially or what it meant with an exemption or anything like that. All I could think was finally, I finally did it, and I wasn't even really trying that hard to win this week. I was just trying to play the best I could. My career was possibly winding down. I had a few more weeks left of a medical. I'd kind of not given up, but I'd kind of consigned myself to the fact that, okay, maybe this is done, but I've done the work. So let's just go play and see what's going to happen. So I was relieved and I was dumbfounded, that I was able to win under those conditions, because that's not what I thought that it was going to take. So, and then I played really well for a year after that, just about. I mean, I was in contention a bunch, and I really felt like I was at the top of my game. And unfortunately, age caught up to me, and I started down the downward spiral with all the injuries. So,
Yeah. Well, speaking of the injuries, like how challenging was it to kind of overcome some of those, I'd imagine, low points, frustration you deal with, knowing that if you were healthy, you don't want to have a great shot at it, right? Like would have to wear on you, I'd imagine, right?
yeah, yeah. So I played for about 3 or 4 months in the first part of 2013 with a broken rib, because I didn't want to stop, because I was playing so well. I thought, oh, I can muscle through the pain. I can get through this. I don't want this to end. I've only got a little bit of time left. I don't want to just walk away over this, because I'm hitting it too good. I'm putting good. I'm in contention. I don't want to stop. And by doing that, I created a lot of other problems around me. The ankle bone's connected to the knee bone, if you know what I mean. So if one thing goes, everything around it's going to go. So the frustrations were, aimed at myself mostly, but you know, pride is a stubborn thing, and I just didn't want to quit, and I didn't want to admit that I couldn't do it.
Yeah. So that kind of just hung there with you then, huh?
Yeah, it did. It stayed. It just kind of hung around, and I started down a path where I would try for 3 or 4 months to play, and I'd get have to stop again, and then I'd do the rehab, the therapy, surgeries, whatever, try back again and have to shut it down again, and try again and shut it down. And then finally in 2000, I think it was 15, I threw my hands in the air and just said, this isn't worth it. I'm spending more time on a training table, and in ice than I am actually applying my craft and trade. So it's emotionally, it's too much on me. It's too hard on my family. I'm done. And I walked away and thought I'd never play again, to be honest with you, until COVID. COVID came around, and I know COVID was a horrible thing. I'm not saying it wasn't, but for me, I couldn't go to restaurants. I couldn't
Yeah.
go, to the 19th hole. I couldn't work doing business development stuff. I couldn't go to the gym. I couldn't go to the range. Couldn't do anything else, right? Couldn't go bars. The only things we could do, Trinity Forest stayed open. So we could drive our cars into the parking lot, put our clubs on our bag on our shoulder, and go play golf. So I did that for 2 or 3 months, and I realized that I still loved it. And if I did it my way, I felt like I could do it without the injuries playing a significant part. So I had to kind of relearn a little bit, um, different ways to move to try to protect my back and to protect my hip. And here we are, 3, 4 years later, and I feel better than I have in a long time, and I'm playing good golf. So it worked out.
Yeah, and it was just small adjustments, right? I think you've heard you talk about like standing more upright, right? You can't be like knees flexed too much. You can't be bent over too much through the swing because that's going to be too hard on the joints, right?
Right. Yeah. Stand a little bit closer to the ball, stand upright a little bit more. Um, you know, I love, how people talk about that X factor where you're supposed to turn hard and resist on the lower body, keeping in squat to build up tension to hit it. No, just I didn't do that. I let my right hip kind of come out a little bit. I just would allow the lower body to turn a little bit as I stood or as I took it back. And then coming through the golf ball, you just go ahead and just let yourself stand up on the backside, or on the follow through, just a little bit, just to take that pressure off that lower back and that kind of shearing motion that happens in the low back. So not substantial. I bet my golf swing doesn't look totally different than it used to, but those changes are significant. And it doesn't mean you change who you are or your DNA. It just you got to alter things every once in a while. You got to find new ways to live, or you die. So yeah, and so I had to do it, and I wanted to do it, and it was worth it to do it, and it's been a good thing for me and my family.
Yeah, and I mean, there's so many directions I can go from here. But you live in Dallas, and you would play
Mhm.
places like Trinity Forest with a lot of younger guys as they're coming up, guys on tour or before tour. How much have you played with the Cootie brothers over the years, Parker Pearson?
Yeah, I've played with them a few times. Of course, I knew, and I still know their father. He was a UT guy, and I've met their
Kyle,
mother
yeah.
a few times. Yeah, they're sweet people. But their grandfather, Charles, was the director of golf at the golf course that I grew up in Abilene before we moved back to Dallas. So I knew him in Abilene as well, and I knew their great grandfather who was there as well. So I know however many that is, 1, 2, 3, 4 generations of cooties, and they're great kids, and they're very very good players. They're powerful players. Um, they're going to have wonderful success. They hit the ball really hard, and they flight it really well. So they just have to learn how to off speed a little bit at times, and how to just kind of temper it down just a little bit. But I think they're going to be wonderful players.
Yeah. Any particular memory that sticks to mind playing with them over the years? Anything come to mind or?
Oh, I don't know. We did play together at Trinity Forest one day. They were headed back to school um, together. I think they stopped on their way out of town, and they had between the two of them, I bet they had 8 putters in their bags. They were they were trying a bunch of different stuff, and they're on the putting green, and they're messing around with long, with elbow anchored, with counterbalance weights. They had all different kinds of things going on, and they talked about just how they kind of like to tinker a little bit, but I think they ended up just settling on one to play. But I kind of thought those are curious kids. They're not just going to take something if it's not working. They're always going to look for what's best for them, which I think is admirable. And then it showed some discipline to be able to put back in what they had before, despite the fact they've got some shiny new toys. They still They still stuck with what they knew, but they're still not afraid. They weren't afraid to look for something new.
Yeah. Well, hey, as I think about, like, obviously you got that first one 2011, and then you got your first win on the PGA Tour Champions. You've been there for a couple years now. In
Yeah.
Richmond, like, what did that feel like to get that win? With your new peers, there in
Yeah.
Richmond on the playoffs.
Yeah. So that felt different than Memphis. Memphis, like I said, was just relief and kind of confusion. Um, when I quit playing in 2016, I was going to be done forever. My wife and I started maybe in 18 and 19, thinking, well, come 21, maybe we might want to do this. COVID came along. I'm boring you by going back, but that really kind of escalated the plan. And the plan was, to try to get away from it long enough. I knew there was going to be consequences to that. I knew that my golf game was not going to be really ready. I also knew I was going to drop down the money list career wise enough to where I was going to lose my eligibility. I was going to lose my status. I was going to have to start at the bottom. So when I turned 50, I had almost zero status on that tour. And I had to beg, steal, and borrow for Monday qualifiers. I mean, for sponsor picks, doing Monday qualifiers, Tuesday qualifiers, trying to top 10 in. I think I played 4 tournaments my first year. I couldn't get in anywhere. Second year, I think I played. I think I did successfully 7 or 8 Monday qualifiers. I think I got 5 picks, and then I played my way into the playoffs and did a couple of top tens, got 15 or 16. But starting out that year, looking at the numbers, I would have gotten into 2. So I really had to earn my way in. And then this year, getting in contention, trying to fight through it, everything going on at home, sticking strong. It was just a validation for me and for my wife, and they that we did the right things, and it worked. And so that's something to be very, very proud in. Winning a golf tournament is one thing, but knowing the troubles that you went through to get there and how you persevered, that's what really makes you feel good.
Man, and what kind of really, I guess it's just fighting for those starts, right? Just that adversity that you faced in those first couple years, right? I mean, that's a hell of a lot of grinding you had to do with
Yeah,
no chance, no guarantee of success, right?
yeah. Being told no a lot, being ignored a lot. These tournament directors probably get 50 or 60 letters, and I get it in their mind. Here's just this guy that used to play a long time ago. Here's a has been who walked away. We're not going to give him a spot. We've got guys that have been committed that need some help. Um, so I get that, but it hurt a little bit. And then on top of that, I did not do a good job of staying on top of my game. I just kind of expected my talent to come through. Look at what Stephen Alker did. Stephen Alker and I turned 50 about the same time. He played all the way through. He played everywhere around the world, wherever he could play. So I like to say he kept his pencil sharp, right? He was ready for the exam. I wasn't. I got out there once I finally did get into a tournament or two. I mean, my pencil wasn't even sharpened at all. In fact, at times I felt like I didn't even have a pencil. So looking back now, I wish that I would have spent more time on my golf game. I feel like that learning curve, it wouldn't have taken 2.5 or 3 years, but it did. And that's what the positive is that I was mentally fresh and rested and ready for the challenge and ready to face the adversity that was coming my way. So it's
Yeah,
give and take both ways.
yeah. Were there a particular, I don't know if it's a low point or if it's a point of just like, man, I can't believe I got a no into a certain tournament, or were there any like specific moments for you that really kind of just spurred you on, or just maybe, um, you know what I mean? Like, or were there any kind of driving force moments for you that kind of, turned the tide a little bit, or
Yeah, I mean,
changed your attitude?
there were several. I would tell you a low point was, oh, 2 years ago, it was May already, and I had felt like I'd only played in 4 tournaments the year before, yet I still only missed making the playoffs by a few players, right? So I mean, I felt like if I had any starts, right? I mean, if I could just get 2 or 3 more, I felt like I could get my foot in the door. But yet here it was, second year, and it was May, and we were having, the senior PGA was coming up, and I'm not going to put names
Sure.
to the guys that got it, but I got told no by the PGA of America for an exemption, and I think it was because they were questioning whether or not I was serious about it. But if I went back and looked at the names of the guys that got it, I was like, oh my gosh, I mean, how far have I fallen? Like what is going on here? How did this happen? And it's no slight towards them in any way.
Sure.
It was all self kind of, beating myself up. But I went to that tournament, and it was going to be my third tournament of the year. And it was May, almost June, actually. And I thought, I can't do this. I mean, if I'm getting this much resistance and this much friction, to get into these things, to get these starts, uh, and I've got this much downtime. That's the big killer. Is that when I was in Dallas, at least I had something to do. I was working for Benchmark Bank and Title in town here, doing some business development stuff. So I had something, but still, you got to have full time, something that you're into. And I was like, this isn't going to work. But then a few months later, I made a call, and Steve Stricker. So that was the low.
Right.
Uh, and I ended up getting in that tournament. I got in at 10:30 or so in the morning on the day of the first round when Steen Tinning withdrew with a back injury, and I felt bad for Steen. But I made the cut, got in my car, I drove to Iowa, did the Tuesday qualifier, won the Tuesday qualifier for the next tournament, and then called Stricker and for his event, and they gave me a sponsor pick. That was the first time. I had gotten one yes before then, and that was at Jerry Kelly's event out in Tucson, and they were great. But that was in the beginning. I didn't really know what to expect. I didn't maybe appreciate it as much as I should have. But when Stricker gave me that spot over a year later, I was like, okay, that's meaningful, that's impactful. I'm, let's go.
Man, yeah, that's got to stick with you.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, that's a really good story. You got such a great underdog story from over the years, and I love the way you tell the story of your wife Allison with all the kids at an airport at DFW, right? She wasn't at your win. Like you didn't work out for her to be in Memphis at that first win in 2011, and just tell us that story just for a minute, just how it all worked out for her as she's listening and trying to get updates. You go into a playoff with Carlson. Is it going to happen? Is her guy going to win? Like,
yeah.
what's that story there?
Well, so backing up, I wasn't going to play. My career was coming to an end, and I got into the U.S. Open. I did the qualifier, and kind of begrudgingly, I went to Memphis. I had historically thought it's too hot. I don't really want to be there. So my caddy talked me into it. He was like, "You're playing so good, you ought to go." And so I went. Allison and the kids, they couldn't get to Memphis during the week, and they had just said, "We're going to wait. We'll fly to DC, and we'll meet you there on Sunday night after you get done with with Memphis, and they actually made the flight for Sunday, thinking things hadn't been going very well. He's going to miss the cut in Memphis, so we'll just get there to soften the blow and make him feel better. So so as the tournament's going along, she had to pack all three kids up and get them to the airport. I think like my oldest was 12, the middle one was 9 or 10, the baby was, gosh, I'm going to say he was 5. So she's got all of them in the airport, and they're trying to get ready to check in and one of the kids is checking his phone or her phone or something, and on the way to the airport, like, Dad just made another birdie and blah blah blah. And, then they got to the airport and they checked in, got through security, and she's got 3 kids trying to get them all situated, but she's also trying to walk into the Chili's, to watch it on the TV in the bar in the restaurant, but trying to keep the 3 kids, and she can't take them in there because it's a bar. But so she's running out to grab one, and the baby's running in the bar, and everything's going chaos and nuts. And the plane, we go into the playoff, and the airline was saying you had to get on the plane. So she was trying to watch it, couldn't watch it, but she didn't want to miss the plane. So she went and took all kids and got everybody on the plane, and she's watching it on her phone, getting texts and updates. And the flight attendant comes by as I was on the last hole with Robert on number 12, and says, "Ma'am, you have to turn your phone off. You have to turn it off right now. We're taking off." So she turns everything off, and I can't remember who it was. It was a rep. It might have been the TaylorMade rep or the Titleist rep. I can't remember. Was sitting a couple of seats behind her, and they took off, and they're about 1,000 feet in the air, and he reaches up and grabs her on the shoulder and said he won.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, so she and all the kids started screaming on the plane. People didn't know what was going on, but they did pretty soon. So, but she missed it, and I wish to this day that they had been there, but things work out the way they're supposed to. I was unable to get to Washington, D.C. that night because we had to stay and do all the stuff. So we spent the night and then got on a plane. I got to see him the next day.
Yeah, congressional that next week for the U.S. Open. For you,
Yeah.
when you look at just an amazing story there, I'd imagine delayed gratification for Alice and all the time she put into that.
Yeah.
Wow, we've got like about 3 minutes left here, 4 minutes left, but I just want to say that the other people, you always talk about the other people that needed that win, right, in your life. It was a special thing, and even this most recent win, to be able to celebrate with these other people that are instrumental, instructors, family, like that's got to be a special thing for you, right?
Oh yeah. I've had so many special people put into my life over the years. Randy Smith
Yeah.
is absolutely one of them. I still see him quite a bit around Dallas. He's very influential in my life. Coach Clayton at the University of Texas was very influential to me. A guy named, he doesn't remember this, and I'm going to call his name out. A guy named Randy Shannon. He was the head pro at Kapalua, but he started in Abilene at Charles Cootie's golf course. He gave me my first lesson. So I'll never forget it. He was a wonderful, wonderful guy and a good teacher and a good head pro. But Bill Duval at Lincoln Property Company, and then 20 years later, Mike Barnett at Benchmark Title, showing me, showing belief in me and faith in me outside of golf, have been wonderful things. I've never wanted to be a full-time golfer, and have never understood or never had the ability to be selfish enough to just be a full-time golfer. I find that unfulfilling. I need more than that. And when golf becomes too much, I tend to not do very well. And then you wonder, what else can I do? And having people that are there around you say, I believe in you. You can do this, and you could do this. You can. It's like with your parents when you're a kid. When they say you can be whatever you want to be, you want to believe that. So all of a sudden, if there's people around you saying you can do this, you can do it, then it just makes you feel better. So it is, without without these special people in my life, who knows where I'd be? And I don't think I'd be here right now.
Yeah. Well, in the next minute or so, like goals for this next year, what are you looking forward to this next year?
So, oh, when I went and committed to the tournaments the other day, I thought, oh, I need to be smart, and just choose the ones I want to play in. And I ended up hitting the select all button. I'm
Wow.
going to play them all. Um, I took off 6 years and I missed it, and I don't want to miss it now. Um, I've gotten full clearance by the people at Benchmark to go play and be a golfer as full time as I want it to be right now. And right now, I do want to play. So I hope to win. I hope to be in the tour championship again at the end of the year, and have similar results to this year. That's my goal.
Yeah. Well, great stuff, Harrison. Will be fun watching your career here. Come out that win there in Richmond. A lot to look forward to here for this next season. So thanks for taking the
Yeah,
time. I appreciate it.
you got it, Garrett. Thanks.